Welcome to this week's Aiding Your Game. We're days away from Christmas and just over a week away from New Year's, and with that being said, I thought it would be a great time for us to look at holidays, festivals, and fairs, why you should have them in your campaign, and some good ways to look at them as you're building out campaigns in your game world. Let's jump into it. Now, before we start this video, please go down and hit the subscribe button to help us grow. If you don't mind the notifications and want to know when we're posting new content, be sure to ding that bell. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy our content. Leave a comment down below of content you'd like to see us cover in our videos. And of course, share this with others so we can continue to grow the community. Now, holidays, festivals, and fairs. How do you work them into your games and stories? Sometimes it can be a challenge, especially if you're looking at smaller holidays such as Halloween. Do you just do a one-off that's themed for Halloween? Do you bring in some of the real-world holidays and festivals and fairs into your game and celebrate them in the game? Do they have an impact to your story, to the characters and to the NPCs of your game worlds? We're going to look at all of this, but really to start, we need to think about holidays, festivals, and fairs and what they mean. So most holidays, as we know them, started because of a celebration of a holy day. So if you have campaigns where you're using religion, it's a great way to introduce and maintain and keep consistency and explain why those holidays are in. Now, there were holidays that were set more by the state or the government rather than the churches and religions. Sometimes they intertwined, sometimes they didn't. One very important aspect to think about is the variance from your game world to the real world. So you don't have to pull in actual real holidays for your game world. In fact, I generally don't. What I do use, however, is making sure to sprinkle in those types of events, whether it's holy days, whether it's days of celebration sanctioned by the state, whether it's just different types of elements of celebration that are working to enhance the people in the campaign, the populace, the NPCs, the towns and cities, and ultimately, how can I use those tools to bring some reality into the games, have some variation to the games that we're playing, and how can I use those to not only drop plot hooks, engage in more RP, create deeper story, and really build in the civilizations of my game world. So to use as an example in this video, I've created a small spreadsheet, and I know there are times that I really go deep. We're going to split this into two parts. So we're going to look at holidays and kind of state-sanctioned holidays initially, and then we're going to look at festivals and fairs a little bit differently in the part two. I'm hoping that we can stay on track and that I'm able to keep these videos to good, manageable, bite-sized pieces that offer great content that you can take away and use in your own games. However, if they tend to go a little bit long, bear with us. The content is going to be fantastic and will help with your game worlds and game creation. So the rest of this video primarily will be viewing the spreadsheet as we fill it out, and you can follow along. If you want the format that I used for this, it was just an Excel, just leave a comment. I'll be happy to send it to you, and we can catch up in DMs, and I'll email it to you. And if you have any questions about the process that I use to kind of go over this, also leave those in the comments or send an email, and I'll be happy to reach out and follow up. But without further ado, let's jump to that different view so that we can look at these creative processes to drop in holidays, festivals, and fairs in your game world. Okay, here is the sheet that I've created just to start talking about holidays, festivals, and fairs. And we're just going to go through and use this. I apologize for the lighting. This is just a paper form that I created in Excel and printed out. Initially, I was going to do this all live on the computer, but we're getting some new hardware as well as some new software. So we're going to have to do this very old school, and I hope the graphics and lighting and everything is not too distracting, but the content is going to be good. So you can see here I've got basically 4 different rows with multiple columns. We're going to focus on the upper 2 primarily, and then we'll get into the next 2 in the next video. But just to go over each, this breaks up a year by season: spring, summer, fall, and winter. And then also wet season, dry season, and wet season. So these 2 you have to think of connected, but they follow along. Your spring and winter are going to be your wettest seasons. Your summer and fall will be the driest. You can adjust these however you like. In your game world, you may have multiple wet or dry seasons. They may be broken up and separated. And then we've got one broken out by moon phases. And you can see this has got some color graphics going from new moon to full moon, and then new moon. Ultimately, these would scale variously, and this was just a quick put together so you could see the moon is going to have multiple stages throughout, because you wouldn't go from a full moon right to a new moon. Though you could, these are fantasy worlds we're playing with. But ultimately, your new moon would be more centered, so you would go from new moon to full moon to new moon to full moon. So it would be, those lighter areas should be in the center. And then just a blank column. Now, as we're looking at holidays specifically, and going back to the thought process of the holidays, meaning holy days, generally holy days are celebrated when there are events that the church really views as sacred. Now, state-sanctioned holidays or state holidays could be completely different. Could be for a signing of a pact that has brought peace after a war. Could be the celebration of the beginning of a war for a group that is more militaristic and really takes honor and pride in wars, for different things like that. There are state holidays that celebrate independence. There are state holidays that celebrate all different kinds of things. So we'll get more into those eventually. But as we look at the majority of history, there are definitely things that we want to think about from an agricultural point. Remember, most holidays were set to to give the majority of the population a reason to celebrate or take a moment away from work and toil to keep them a little more happy, I guess, is the best way to describe it, to remind them that things aren't always just toil and soil. So with the first one, from an agricultural standpoint, the seasons are the most important. So we're going to go through spring, we know, is the beginning of planting. That's when you're going to be having the populace primarily working on tilling soils, and they're going to be planting seeds. They're going to be prepping things up for the summer grow season. So we know spring, there is a big focus on planting and field work. And then summer is really about growing. We also have to concern ourselves, we're getting into dry season, so there could be droughts. Wet season, lots of rains. Now fall, generally you're looking at late fall having the harvest. Also for many societies, if you're looking at any type of hunt and gather culture, hunting is primarily done during the fall when there are opportunities to take advantage of the rut. Now notice that the majority of hunting in our medieval history was not really sanctioned because the land was not owned by the people. Therefore, the animals and everything on the land also were off limits. So in our game worlds, that could vary. And then winter is when you really just survive. Winter is about making it through. So as I look at my chart, I think we've got work here, we've got work here, and we've got just survival here. Summer is kind of a down-spec'd piece. So holidays, what kind of holidays can we deduce just from this? Well, the first one is harvest is a big one. That's when we're going to have all kinds of opportunity to celebrate a bountiful spring. And then for planting, we want to make sure that we have some type of a celebration when the fields are sown, and maybe even before that, prepping up for good conditions for a bountiful crop. So we definitely should have some type of a celebration there. Now, this makes me think of fertility. This makes me think of the gods who are going to be looking out for farmers and fields. So, a little trouble with my pen. May have to switch. Let me try to. There we go. So, ag. Summer is a very challenging one. So that one there, most likely you're not going to have a very big celebration from a church standpoint. However, the state may want to do something to break that up. And that one there could be something just to take the mind off of possible droughts. We don't want people to be worrying, so we're going to have some type of a celebration. And this one here is just going to be about maybe pray for rain. Who knows? Maybe it's just cut the dust. Maybe it's about travel. And then winter, we're not going to have many that are going to be very large, but it's going to be about, let's see how we can spin this. We're going to say about life and death, contemplating the mysteries of life and death, also celebrations of those who passed. So just looking at it seasonally, we can pick out a few different celebrations that we want to highlight. Looking at the current calendar that we have some that work similar to this. If we look at, say, for instance, fall with the harvest, many times we have fall festivals. There are many times that we celebrate county fairs and look at how successful we have been through our season to create and grow, whether it's livestock, whether it's any type of agriculture, whether it's any type of crafts and baking. How did we use that season to create and make things that are prized and valuable? So that one there is a good one. We're going to put this as, because that is something that agriculturally could be good, this could be a fair or a festival. As we look at celebration of life and death and just surviving that winter, that to me screams religion. That's where you have to have faith to get through. You're going to be contemplating life and death, the mysteries of life and death. So this one here will be a holiday and possibly not celebrated in as large a manner. This one could be more personal. This one here, praying for rain and cutting the dust. This one here also is all about kind of making it through a challenging point. That to me screams holiday. And then this one here with the beginning of planting fields and crops. Also, you're going to be thinking about those praying for good crops to come in. So also a holiday. So right here we've got each season we've got different kind of holidays celebrated. Now you can go even further into this and create even more. Perhaps this holiday, aside from just praying to gods for fertility and agriculture, you could celebrate a saint or a god who really showed the virtues of fertility and agriculture, good crops, things like that. Maybe this is a saint who in a region came through and blessed all the crops and had a bountiful harvest later that year. So we're celebrating that saint. All different kinds of things you can work on that. But for us initially, we know we want to have a holiday in the spring. We know we're going to have a holiday in the summer, and we put it kind of late summer. As that time gets dragging on, people start losing hope. Then that breaks up. In the fall, we celebrate the harvest, and that one there is really more about kind of that fair and festival piece. But again, we can tie back in. Is there a saint that we can celebrate for that fall harvest? Is there an event that your churches or your temples celebrate that harvest? Perhaps there is something where there is an opportunity to gain blessings and everything by turning over a set part of your harvest to the temples. So that could also be, aside from a fair festival, we could have a holiday celebration mixed in with that fair and festival. And then in the winter, celebration of life and death, also looking at a holiday. And then, of course, we start the new year, possibly as we get into spring, celebrating the successful opportunity that we did survive that winter. So just real quickly, we've got a couple that we can sprinkle in. Again, I try to keep this as light as possible. I don't want to overburden. But depending on when my campaigns are going, I could celebrate these in different ways in different cultures based on where the players are. So this one here, as we look at that early spring piece getting ready for the harvest, we're going to say that this holiday is going to be the celebration of seeds. And this is going to be a holiday where we, let's say we venerate Saint Gilbert. Why not? Because Saint Gilbert, ages ago, blessed the fields and gave us a fantastic harvest for that season. So the temple that we're going to put this in is going to, regardless of what they are, because even war temples need food for their troops. So in our campaign, we're going to have a celebration of seeds where we venerate Saint Gilbert, sower of seeds. So there's one holiday we can pop in. Now in the summer, we're looking for rain, cutting the dust, possibly travel type of piece. For this holiday here, we need to, I like thinking about the travel, and we mentioned the war even needing some type of piece on this. So maybe on this holiday here, we are going to honor Saint, we'll call this one Saint, I started with an E. Let's go with honoring Saint Albert. And again, we can adjust these. This is just placeholders, so don't torch me too much. But Saint Albert was a saint who marched for the temple against a rival temple. He took a path that was opened via the drought and successfully led his clerics and paladins through a treacherous journey to overcome the challenges that a opposing temple were putting onto the populace. And he would not have been able to make it through this treacherous journey through the deserts and made a successful campaign, but he did through the works of his God and sustained off of the, maybe it's good berries, maybe it's creating water in the desert, whatever it could be. But because of his perseverance and his trial, he made it through, and so we are going to honor Saint Elbert. Now for the fall, we know it's going to be tied into a big fair and festival, but the holiday that we want to celebrate, we can tie back into Saint Gilbert. So when Saint Gilbert blessed and sowed the seeds, everybody came and gave their offerings to the god, whether it's Artemis or whoever. This one here is all about providing a sacrifice at temple and sharing the bounty. So this is your bake sale that happens at the temple. Everybody comes in and participates. They make a big production of the bounty that they fared, and they all partake in a bake sale at the temple. So a fantastic opportunity. And again, this is going to be not addressed specifically at a saint, but more under the guidance of the god. And then for the winter holiday, we have to think of a god who, or saints, depending again on how you run your religions, but we'll use Ilmater, who is the god of suffering. He kind of tells you to suffer on behalf of others, and that's how you gain blessings. So this one here, we are going to absolutely have a day of reflection, or a week, maybe it's a week-long thing, where we recognize that we're suffering and thank Ilmater for allowing us to suffer so that we can persevere and be stronger for it. So this one here is going to be fasting and praying, and we'll also light candles to stave off the dark. So there we go. We've got 4 quick build holidays that we've put into our calendar. Very easy. Those ones there are all primarily focused around church. They're all religious holidays. Let's go down and talk about state. So the holidays themselves are based around the populace, the majority of the commoners who are going to be toilers and are going to be working most of the year, even through winter. Now the state, they also kind of follow the same things. They'll celebrate with each of these, but there are a couple of things that we want to pop in for the state. And some of these will tie in. For instance, we know most of the time militaries don't move in winter. They have big spring and summer and kind of wrap up in the fall. So winter, we're going to leave actually kind of blank for the state. That's also a big part of the wet season. There are no real celebrations there. They still think that the temple holidays are going to be enough. Possibly, maybe not. We'll go back to that. But let's start. The wet season is still here. It's raining, it's pouring. Maybe the military here in the spring, they started a campaign that ultimately saw them successfully stave off a siege over winter. Or maybe a siege was successfully kept during the winter, and they finally had the kingdom or the castle or the outpost surrender. So why not? That's a good one, actually. This will celebrate the surrender of Greyport. This is a holiday where we celebrate the troops who successfully sieged over winter and into the spring the city of Greyport. Greyport finally had enough. They knew, depleted all of their supplies in winter. They would not be able to go out and sow the fields, so they surrendered. So we've got a state holiday here where there was the surrender of Greyport. And it's most likely a more regional piece, but who knows? Maybe Greyport is a big, huge port that was important to the kingdom and allows for a more kingdom-wide celebration. So a big victory, a big win, a big opportunity for the state heads to have a holiday for their military prowess. Now, for the dry season, a lot of times there are things that military does on the off season. You think about Romans building roads. We're fighting droughts. We know that Albert the Saint had a military victory here in the summer, in the dry season. So we are also going to say that the March of Albert is celebrated by the state because of the military, the absolute, positively militaristic leadership of Albert, who the state heads, who the kingdom heads will want to say is all a part of them, is going to celebrate. So this one here, we've got a good tie-in. For the holiday festival of the fall, again, this is something where we can, if we wanted to, again, this is if we don't tie in the religious. I'm looking at multiple layers here as well as co-joined pieces, but for the harvest, this may be one where the city decides that with the peasants toiling through and doing a good harvest, we're going to have a free market day. The free market, they can come and sell their goods in the nearest, whether it's a castle or large city or anywhere that has a big marketplace. The commoners can come and sell their wares at the free market. They'll all be given a loaf of bread to start, or maybe a meat pie, who knows, but they won't have to pay the market fee. There's no market fee for that day. It's a celebration. However, they do have to pay their taxes. So that could be a time where taxes are collected, and it's a good way to get all the commoners to come into the city without having to pay market fees, but the tax collectors can all swarm them there and collect the taxes for the year. Because we know kingdoms love to collect their taxes. And then wet season, again, generally you don't have much military things, but because we early on said that Greyport was being sieged and there was a surrender of Greyport, perhaps here in the winter we will celebrate. Let's say this one is General Hobbs, who is the one who surrounded and laid siege to Greyport. Maybe it's a completely different battle, who knows. But we're going to pick a celebrity, a state celebrity. Maybe this is an older king, former ruler, someone who did some type of big positive thing to the kingdom. We're going to celebrate them because they have now passed, and we're tying it into that life and death mystery piece where we contemplate the passage of those who came before us. All very good opportunities to pop in the calendar, just some quick celebrations. Now we can go through and think about at these celebrations. I mean, we already did it quite a bit in the free market day. We did it a decent amount for sowing the fields. So starting to think about the celebrations that your characters in your game will see. Are they going to partake in them? Are there opportunities for them to gain some knowledge on adventures they're currently taking? Is there opportunity for them to go through and get plot hooks, make connections, visit with some of their NPCs, whether that's former family or friends, maybe it's rivals, but good opportunities. So fairs and festivals, looking at it both religiously and statewide, we can pop some in, utilize them, utilize game elements, and make them our own. They don't have to be perfectly making sense. They don't have to coincide with what we celebrate in the real world, but they touch onto the worlds that we create and thereby give it more depth. Now, if you're looking for a stupid, simple piece, you can go through and add in, we're going to celebrate independence. We're going to celebrate Hanukkah. We're going to go through and celebrate Easter. We're going to go through and celebrate New Year. If that's going to be quicker and easier, that's great. However you go through and design your holidays, your state-sanctioned or religious holidays, pepper those in and utilize them in your game to get your characters invested in the game world, in the communities that they're serving, protecting, fighting against, or trying to evade in their adventures. And look for opportunities to bring the lore of your worlds to more rich life by having celebrations of the holidays. True, it is a little more work, but being a great GM oftentimes requires a little bit more work. Next time, we're going to go through these two, and we're going to talk about how to use some not only astrological and magical effects, but also background and schooling to add in holidays into our game worlds. So I hope this is helpful. I hope it gets you thinking about holidays in your game world. So there we go. Just some easy pieces to drop into your campaign, some ideas on how to use them in your games, and ultimately why they should be an important part or important aspect of your game creation. Join us next week as we continue to build on this and get ready to celebrate the new year. And of course, however you celebrate the holidays, whether it's with Christmas or Hanukkah or any other celebration, I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a very Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed that video. Here's a link to another video that you may enjoy. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button to help us grow. If you'd like to support us, make sure you check out the description of the video with some links and leave a comment to let us know where will your adventures take you.